Hey friends, I feel like the term red flag comes up a lot in conversations these days, and I'll admit I'm a fan of the term. It's a very easy, common sense way to say, in the words of Oda Mae Brown in the movie Ghost, "You in danger, girl." Since it is such a popular topic, there is a lot of advice out there about why and how you should watch out for them in others. In fact, I'm pretty sure we've talked about them in quite a few videos on this channel already. And honestly, looking out for red flags is really important because it helps us to have our eyes wide open when it comes to our interpersonal relationships. Plus, so very often we are stunned or shooketh, as I think the kids say these days, by someone's bad behavior, but later on we realize that there were signs that this is who they really are all along, but we either didn't want to see it or didn't want to believe it. One thing that I find interesting, though, is that there is not nearly enough discussion about how recognizing red flags in ourselves is just as important as recognizing them in others. In fact, I think it might even be more important. I think most people are pretty well aware of what their strengths are, and that's great because those are the things that you know you can count on when you need them. But what about the things that aren't strengths? What about the things that can get you in some trouble when you do not keep them in check? Those are important to be aware of, too. Trust me on this one. So, what are some red flags in yourself that you need to pay attention to and work on so that they do not get in the way of your personal growth or even just your ability to make good decisions? Here are a few examples. Number one, your sense of self-worth is based largely on what other people think about you. I think Oda Mae would definitely say, "You in danger, girl," to this one, big time, because that is why, which is why I made it number one. When you do this, when you let other people consistently assign your worth, you are always going to get shortchanged. Nobody else knows you like you know you, friends. They don't know all of your strengths, your talents, or what you're capable of. Only you do, and that's why you should be the one assigning it. Number two, you tend to ignore a lot of other people's red flags, including very obvious ones. Friends, we often create so much of our own heartbreak by being willfully blind to other people's issues and their realities in order to chase temporary happiness. People will often tell you who they are with their words, but we know better than to judge true character on that. Paying attention to their actions and patterns will either confirm or deny, and with time, and as you get to know them, you will figure out sometimes that person is exactly who they have been saying they are the whole time. And if so, congratulations, you have found an authentic person. Go and collect your $200. But sometimes we are not so lucky. People's actions and patterns will reveal that they are actually quite different from who they say they are. They have some issues which they may not have told you about. Now listen, everyone has issues, but the kind of issues I'm talking about are of the variety that can really affect your relationship with them, like serious anger problems, mental health issues for which they are not seeking help, poor communication skills, emotional stunting where they are not able to apologize when they're wrong, or where they will not talk about things and prefer the silent treatment. That's not a big list, but I think you know what I'm getting at here. Realistically, there's no way that being in a relationship with someone who has significant anger management challenges is not going to affect you in some way. Because what's going to happen when you get into a heated argument with them and the emotion is on, but the brain is off? Whatever the issue that you uncover, even when it's not as extreme or serious as the examples I just gave, when you see someone's true colors and they aren't ones that you like, what happens? No, you don't try to repaint them. You have to reevaluate and decide if those are things that you can really deal with. That can be a very tough choice when the relationship has been going on for some time. But let's be honest, whatever those things are that you are now faced with dealing with, chances are good that they didn't just pop up overnight. I would be willing to bet that there were signs, even if they were small at some point. And my friends, what are signs for? To guide you, to warn you, too. That's why it's important to see them, and I mean really see them, with an honest, not rose-colored lens when you are making commitments to people. Number 3, you're a control freak. I have known, perhaps unfortunately, a lot of people who are controlling to the point where you could comfortably call them a control freak. They are interesting. Some of them are actually not aware of how controlling they are. Some are and just don't care. There are variations on their level of being controlling too. So in other words, control freaks are all different, but one common denominator that I have noticed in all of them, or at least the ones I have ever met, has been that the more aspects of their lives that are out of control, the less in control of themselves in general, actually, the more they will try to control other people. When you're in a situation like this, you will often find yourself searching for something to control, anything, so that you can feel like you can keep your sanity. It rarely manifests itself as a successful action or something good for us, so to speak. Often, it can actually end up giving us the opposite of what we were hoping for. It's sort of like, don't touch the stove, it's hot. That lesson that adults try to instill in us over and over as kids. Most kids, at some point, what do? They touch the stupid stove anyway, right? Even if it wasn't a thought prior to the adult telling you not to. And as simplistic as that example is, I think it does a great job in illustrating the overall point. So, if you are struggling with this, keep this in mind. There are a lot of things in life that you just can't control. Well, children are one of them, but people in general are also another one, a big one. And as such, because you don't control people, you also don't control their behavior either. So even if you tried to micromanage every aspect of your relationship with someone in hopes that it would turn out the way you want it to, it probably won't. They are always going to do what they really want to do anyway. So sometimes you just have to let things be what they're going to be. Learning this can save you a lot of heartache, and honestly, it gives you more time to forge your own autonomy and figure out how you can be in better control of yourself and your situations. Your interest in controlling the uncontrollable will wane on its own once you do. Trust me on this one. It's one of those lessons you don't always get until you do, if you know what I mean. Number 4, not speaking up for yourself. I will go ahead and admit that this is a red flag that I had carried around for a long time and didn't know it. I don't think I could honestly tell you when it changed. It wasn't a spotlight moment, but more like an evolution. Why not speaking up for yourself is bad is pretty explanatory, I think. But because it's so very important, I'll say this. Your well-being matters. Your happiness matters. Your wants and desires matter. Your needs matter. Your choices are yours to make, and those matter too. When you don't speak up for yourself, you let other people make those choices for you instead. You take what's available versus what you want. You settle. You get a consolation prize, so to speak. Sometimes you end up very disappointed with, well, all of this. So how do you fix that? Speak up for yourself. Stop being silent when you are being disrespected. Stop allowing people to take advantage of you. Stop bending over backwards to keep the peace. Stop putting everyone else's needs, wants, and comfort ahead of your own. And yes, I know, this is easy to say, but not so easy to do. But remember when I said a few minutes ago that I have some personal experience with that red flag? I've been there, bought the t-shirt and the mug, and later bought another set just for good measure. And the only thing that I really got out of it was resentment, and in some cases anger that I didn't speak up sooner, or at all. So now, if you're coming in my direction, you better come correct, because you will get checked on it if you don't. And I don't actually care if that sounds rude or not, because, hey, disrespect is pretty damn rude too. Am I right? Speaking up for myself is honestly one of the best things I ever did for my self-confidence. I recommend it to everyone. Number 5, you find it very difficult to apologize. This is not a problem that I can say I have personally had, friends, full disclosure. I don't actually understand it at all. But the number of times I have heard people say that Fulana never apologizes, never says sorry, or Fulano will never apologize for anything, not ever, is too damn high. If you don't know who Fulana and Fulano are, then, well, they are the Hispanic equivalent for, say, Jane and John Doe, generic people. It sounds fancier, and it gives me an opportunity to throw a little Spanish lesson in there, too. Anyway, look, I won't pretend to understand why there seems to be such an issue with people apologizing, but based on how often I hear about this and the amount of views that videos where I talk about non-apologies get, it is clearly a problem that is pretty widespread. I don't know how and why people began to equate apologizing with being weak, but listen, it's not at all. It is the opposite. Having the character to admit, hey, I messed up and I am sorry, is actually a sign of strength. To put it short, it matters, and it shows that you care about your relationship with the person that you've wronged. So, if you're struggling with this, with all due respect, you have some work to do. Get over it. Figure out why apologies are uncomfortable for you. For most people, it's because they are struggling with deep feelings of low self-worth. Saying, I'm sorry, feels like a direct hit to the ego, and when the ego is wounded, defense mechanisms kick in. The more rigid the defense, the more fragile the ego behind it probably is, too. Look, defense mechanisms are not bad things, not at all, but we can't let them rule our interpersonal relationships. We can't let them be an echo chamber in our heads telling us that we are always right, they are always wrong, and we don't need to be accountable for things, because we do. We need to own our responsibilities for things we say and do, even when they're wrong or hurtful, especially when it's to someone else. Whatever empowerment you receive from not apologizing, from deflecting blame, is always temporary, and relationships with other people shouldn't be. They are not disposable, where you can just get a new one tomorrow. The ego's fragility and our giving into it has fractured more relationships and human connections than I'd ever have time to cover in a video or even 1,000 videos. So let's stop thinking that people who don't apologize are so tough. Let's stop thinking that doubling down on being wrong is a sign of strength. It's not at all. And if this is something that you're trying to improve, then you have my support and applause, and I mean that sincerely. It's not easy, but it makes you a kinder, more empathetic person, and that, friend, is a real strength. Number 6, perfectionism to the point of paralysis. I will admit that I can be a perfectionist sometimes, and it's not a quality that I would consider to be one of my better ones. It's cost me opportunities, it's cost me money for sure, and it's stressed me the hell out, to say the least. Yet, from time to time, I will find myself stuck spinning my wheels with something that I needed to do like yesterday, but I am still not doing it because I want to do it perfectly, and I don't know if I can, and blah, 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 noise, noise, noise. I'm going to share with you one of the biggest kicks in the pants I have ever gotten, which I read in a magazine interview years ago. It's just 3 words, but they stopped me in my tracks, and I literally read it over and over and over. Ready? It was said by Steve Jobs, founder of Apple, and it is, real artists ship. So what does that mean? It means that you can paint the most beautiful piece of art ever made. You can write the most beautiful song ever written. You can create the coolest, most functional, life-changing product ever. But if you don't share it with the world, because it's not perfect yet, if nobody has seen it, heard it, bought it, used it, then you have nothing. For context, he was saying this in reference to computer development, but it applies hard to just about anything else that you're doing too, doesn't it? Whenever I am working on things that I need to get done and catch myself being a perfectionist to the point where I'm just wasting time trying to make it perfect instead of just getting it done, I think about this quote, and it has actually motivated me to stop reaching for perfect and instead reaching for done, which is a much more realistic and attainable goal. Can you relate to this? How many times do you have to do something, but you put it off and off and off because it's not the perfect time, it's not the perfect weather, it's not the perfect something, and you do this over and over. And next thing you know, time has passed, more time has passed, and it just doesn't get done at all. Yeah. Or the 11th hour rolls around and now you're forced to get it done. And it's certain that it won't be perfect or even done well because you're rushing and you're almost out of time. Friends, you've set yourself up to fail when you do this. We do this to ourselves entirely too much. Hell, we probably set ourselves up to fail way more than other people do it to us. We do it to chase perfection, but psst, perfection is an illusion, a dangerous one at that. You know why? Because humans are imperfect and therefore cannot make perfect things either. There is always going to be something that can and probably will go wrong, and that's okay. But what about the perfect time? That's a thing, right? No, sorry, that's also an illusion. There can be good timing, there can be coincidence, but perfect timing to start something? Not so much. You get time. That's it. You can start where you are and work with what you have. Or you can continue to punt that ball down the road to someday, which you may have noticed is nowhere to be found on a calendar. Do you know what one of the big, and I mean really big, reasons why people insist on things like the perfect time, the perfect day, the perfect outfit, or whatever? It's actually a different P word in a cuter outfit. It's procrastination. And it is one of the absolute biggest forms of self-sabotage that there is. It's a thief of time. It's a flattener of ambition. It's dilution of momentum. There's only one thing that procrastination is really good at, and that is making excuses. And look, I am saying this as someone who was a champion procrastinator for years and years. You don't even want to know, trust me. I still slip up often because imperfect human over here. But for the most part, that is just not my life anymore. And the way I learned to abandon that habit quite a bit was by no longer using perfect as an end goal. I set realistic benchmarks, and I stick to them whenever possible. I let things go even if they're not perfect, and most of the time it works out just fine, and all the worrying I did about it, I forgot about it already. So, if you're struggling with this issue of perfection to the point of paralysis, I don't want to say that the simple answer is let that shit go, but it kind of is. So let that shit go, for real. Perfect isn't coming. Don't miss out on good enough or done. Hooray, by trying to chase the non-existent. So there you have it. 6 red flags to watch out for in yourself, friends. I only intended to give you a couple, but you know me, I never run out of things to say. So what are some other red flags that you should look out for in yourself that I might have missed? Let me know in the comments or send me a message about it, and maybe we'll cover that in a future red flags video, of which I guess I need to make some more. That's all I've got for you this week. I'll be back next week with another priority message. Until then, take good care of yourselves. Bye.